Hello, and welcome to Talk of the Town. We have a very, very interesting show today. I'm delighted to welcome my guests, Colin Tanner and Kerry Harris. Colin, how are you, buddy?
Very good, thank you, Michael.
Good to see you, my friend Kerry.
Michael.
You both have been recognized around the community. Folks have seen your faces. Give me a little background, Kerry. You were with Los Gatos Police, correct?
Right. Right. I started with the Los Gatos Police Department in 1988, retired in 2013, and
Friend of my buddy Scott Seaman.
absolutely worked for the sheriff's office for 6 years before that. So had a 31-year career in law enforcement and loved every minute of it.
And you worked. Did you start the SWAT program?
Didn't start it. I joined the SWAT team in 1993 when I was promoted to sergeant, and was one of the SWAT team leaders there for the next 13 years. So it was a outstanding experience. All the folks at the Los Gatos Police Department are really outstanding folks, and the SWAT team was just a group of really enthusiastic.
Well, there's the obvious remark that the idea of SWAT team in Los Gatos seems like mutually exclusive terms. Was someone double parked? But the fact is, it's a valuable part of policing.
Yeah, I mean, and I can tell you, we had discussions over the years whether Los Gatos needs a SWAT team. And the reality is that SWAT type tactical situations happen everywhere, large towns and small towns, and we lose one of the services, one of the capabilities that the police department had if we would have lost the SWAT team to deal with the situation. Certainly we could have called for mutual aid from another jurisdiction, but then you're talking about time, you're talking about familiarity with those places.
It's one of those that's never important until you need it.
That's right, exactly right.
Colin Tanner, your background is emergency services.
Emergency management, primarily teaching the public how to take care of themselves in an emergency.
Okay. Your all this expertise has come together in a company called, one of the great names, by the way, the National Violent Intruder Preparedness Solutions.
It's a mouthful.
While you don't have a marketing firm, you do some amazing work, and we have talked off camera about this. It's kind of a tragic reality that this type of organization even needs to exist. But San Bernardino and Newtown and Charlotte and Paris, the list can take the entire show. Tell me about the thinking of forming this and what each of you individually has brought to the table.
Yes, absolutely. So I got into this topic because I was the patrol watch supervisor in 1999, the day after Columbine happened. And I literally sat with my patrol team, my patrol officers here in Los Gatos in the squad room at our morning briefing and said, if this Columbine situation excited the imagination of some wacko in our community, we can't do it the way that it happened in Columbine. And it's not an indictment of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. They were doing exactly the way their procedures, their policy, their training directed them to do, but it was a disaster.
For something that never happened.
But it was a disaster, and people died needlessly in Columbine because of the way that the police responded. And so we literally sat down and we developed a strategy that day, that morning, and said, if this happens at Los Gatos High School or Fisher Middle School or one of our elementary schools today, we are going to do it differently.
What did Columbine do wrong?
Well, I mean, the reality was that the killers, Klebold and Harris at Columbine, went in, they shot. Law enforcement arrived on scene, and they did what their procedures would tell them to do, set up a perimeter and wait for SWAT to arrive. But SWAT people were coming from all over the place. They couldn't even get to the school because of traffic. Some SWAT officers had to park as far as a half mile away, carry all their gear, and run through traffic to get to the school to form into a contact team. Then they went in, and per their procedure, they went in where the suspects were last seen through a door over there. They went into that door, and per their procedure, they cleared every room that they passed. They never go past an uncleared room, so they emptied a room here, emptied a room there, emptied a room there. And it took them over 3 hours to make their way to the end of the school where the library was.
And the killers were still alive?
The killers were dead at this point. The killers had committed suicide probably even before SWAT entered. But they took the SWAT team 3 hours to get to the library where 10 of the 13 killed lay dead or dying. And so we just said, we can't do it that way anymore. If we're going to where the gunmen were last seen, we're going to where we hear gunfire, we're going to where we hear screams. We're going to form into a contact team and we're going there to neutralize the threat. Evacuating people from places where they are otherwise safe is
Well,
what we'll
it's,
do last.
it's like the fire department going to the room that isn't on fire.
Common sense.
Yeah.
But it was the way things
But
worked.
at the
and
time,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Colin, now you guys met because you were interested in, and you took a course on this, am I correct?
Right, I took a course, and Kerry was my first teacher, and I took the course and I thought, well, you know, we are preparing our communities for fire. We do fire drills. We're preparing them for earthquakes. We're preparing them for floods, but we're not preparing them for the realities out there about active shooter or violent intruder. And I thought we really need to, and so I wanted to become more involved with this. So I asked Kerry, well, how do I become an instructor? One thing led to another. I became an instructor, and then we started to look at, well, is there something missing here? And we looked at what we were teaching and came up with things that we thought needed to be included in what is presented to the public.
This is not about gun control, although it's a subject that needs to be discussed, and certainly we can't guarantee things never happening again. And I'm a great believer in registration, and the fact that at least it gives you one more chance to delay a tragedy. Talk to me about when you go in, and this is needless to say a tough subject for people to deal with. I mean, it's like, give me a course on childhood cancer. I mean, you go, you know, the people, I really don't want to, yeah, well, you got to talk about it. And it's, there's a point where, as a citizen, you need to respond, and we'll talk about that, but is there also a point where you don't respond? I'm just saying where you lay low.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talk about those two areas.
Yeah, thank you. And that's an important distinction, and what's really important about it is the fact that the actions that an individual should take if an incident were to happen in their organization, whether it's a school or a hospital or a business setting, the action that they take should be appropriate to them, and the appropriate action may be entirely different for someone in the next room or down the hall or on the next floor. That we go to organizations, and this is what we teach. We don't go to police departments and teach this, because police departments are teaching what they do in their response, and that's all good. But we need to talk to hospitals, we need to talk to schools, we need to talk to businesses about what would happen if it were to take place in their location. And the realities are different. In a school, where you might have a teacher with a classroom full of children and possibly a place to lock down and make yourself safe, their reality may be one thing. But when we teach it to a group of doctors or nurses on a medical floor in a hospital, and they have patients who are immobile, the training needs to be different. And the realities are different. They have to deal with issues of patient abandonment. When you talk to a group of high school teachers, it's a different message than when we talk to a preschool teacher, you know, dealing with 3 and 4-year-olds. And so that's really what we found is when we put this message out to folks, the message has to be narrowly tailored to what these folks' reality is. But to get back to your fundamental question, absolutely. Whatever people need to do to make themselves safe, they should do. And that's been a hard battle to fight. Yeah. I think, you know, to get past people's sense of, no, I shouldn't hurt somebody, I can't fight. Well, I'll just lock down and hide. Well, what we found is inaction, hiding out and just hoping the bad guy doesn't find us, unless you're in a place where you can do it safely, is a death sentence.
There's a marvelous film called Small Soldiers, which is kind of a goofy cult film, but there's a great line that says, if we fight, we'll die. And he says, if we hide, we'll die. So there's the reality that has to be dealt with. Right. You Colin, told me one time, and I found it terribly interesting, that the killers are primarily looking for numbers.
That's right.
So they're not going to spend a lot of time on a locked door. You know, they're going to go 10 seconds because, you know, and for whatever reason, I got to get to 84 today or whatever.
Right, absolutely. A number of the killers have expressed an interest in numbers. It's a numbers game. Adam Lanza, his thing was about to beat the previous high number, and we've seen that over and over again. Not every active shooter is like that, but that is a situation. So if we can barricade a door, we go into a lockdown, into a room, lock the door, draw the blinds, turn off the lights, put all of the furniture up against that door, and then encourage that active shooter not to spend 5 minutes trying to bust through that door, but go someplace else looking for other victims, we've saved ourselves. Our only goal here is to stay alive until police arrive and save the situation.
Well, at what point, if you have an opportunity, I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, to get out, you obviously should take it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's been
It's
one
not
of
like I went by the exit so I could block myself in.
Well,
Actually, you know,
and this seems, and it is obvious, we think it is extremely intuitive, but what we have found in many places, people are, I can't leave. I can't I can't
God
have my
forbid I'm on the clock.
well, or I can't have my children off campus unsupervised during school hours.
Absolutely.
That's a violation of truancy rules.
Yeah.
And so some of those paradigms, those constants that people, organizations have in their minds,
And
they
you're
have to get past
essentially in
that.
shock at the time.
Right.
yes.
Yep.
So
And so
you're
what
not
we,
necessarily going to be thinking that straight.
what we found in from my experience in training in law enforcement and Colin's training in emergency management is we find that if we don't talk about things, if we don't program our minds to deal with the situation, when we hear the screams and the gunfire, we default to inaction.
Yeah.
But if we have populated the old hard drive with something, oh my gosh, that is screams and gunfire.
Right.
What do I do? What do I do? Well, that's right. I should get away from that. Now that seems intuitive, but people have been sort of not only is it intuitive, but it is instinctual. It is what is hard.
Well, you want to believe during the motorcade it was a backfire of a car.
Exactly right.
You
Exactly
want to
right.
believe something else, and when we have a classroom or a room full of people and they hear what they think might be construction noises down the hallway and nobody else is doing anything, they think, well, it must be construction noises. But as those noises get closer and they hear screams, then they start to think, well, it's something else.
Is there any better sentence for security than whoever came up with if you see something, say something?
It's wonderful.
You know, and if you hear something, think something. Maybe that's even more important.
Absolutely.
Well, and the real value of that is that what we teach and what is being taught around the nation is nothing high tech. It's nothing fancy. We're not teaching some kung fu move where you have to do this or that. We're really telling folks, listen, what is hardwired into your head to flee from danger, hide from danger, or fight, resist, is already in your head, and that's why we're here today, is because we have learned that is what you do to respond to danger. But we have, because of our inherent feeling of safety nowadays,
Sure.
we don't think that way, but we need to think that way sometimes. And so when we talk about what we train, we're just saying, listen, we don't have to train you anything fancy, because what you need to know is already in your head.
As we talked about before Columbine, I mean, before the first one, obviously, who knew how to react? I mean, I think of Katrina and how FEMA wasn't ready. Let's pray that if and when it happens again, that they respond differently. You going in, do you find yourself ever, you say it's not part of the police, but is it ever an adversarial situation with the police? Are you going in as a little bit interloping and say, what are these guys coming in? Or do they work, or do you work, do you come in and say, for instance, we're going to work, I know you're doing something at El Camino Hospital. Do you come into Mountain View and say, hey, we're going to do this? Do you inform the police of what's going on?
Well, I think Kerry could answer that, but I think it really depends on the situation. If we are doing an exercise where we will be running through the hallways,
Sure.
We tend to let the police know what we're doing. We're not using anything that looks like a real gun.
But do the police, appreciate you guys doing this. I
Yeah.
would imagine it would be a premium added.
Right.
Right.
So I'll tell you. In the early days, when our schools would come to us, to me as a police sergeant, an individual who had a relationship with them, they would come and say, what should we do about this? And we would offer assurances that your law enforcement agency is well trained, well prepared, and ready to respond to these situations. And that would comfort them.
Sure.
And because that is what we knew. But as we, subsequent to that time now, have looked at these and studied hundreds of these events, what we know is that by the time somebody hears the screams and gunfire and calls 911 and talks to a dispatcher, and a dispatcher dispatches units, and units take the call and respond from wherever they are, they get themselves geared up, they go into their contact team and move towards the threat, anywhere from 6 to 12 minutes, 6 to 15 minutes has elapsed. And along with that study, when we look at hundreds of these events, what we find is the vast majority of the killing is done in the first 6 to 9 minutes. And so when you look at those numbers, the reality is it's important that law enforcement responds quickly and responds well. But the fact is that the biggest predictor of safety and survivability of these events is a well-trained, well-prepared organization. And in some police departments, we've taught in some parts of the country where the police department is not happy to have somebody
That's my point,
tell their hospital that you need to be prepared. You have a great police department, but they are not going to be here when you need them most. Other police departments, and I think the vast majority of them realize that is the fact. And,
Well,
and don't have a
I
problem.
would think that it's sacrosanct with you fellas to say no matter how much training we give you, dial 911 first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get them coming.
Yeah.
Because what we know.
Because don't say, well, I've been trained. We'll
Yeah.
be okay.
No.
So, yeah.
No, the end game for us in terms of preparedness, when law enforcement comes in and takes over the situation and neutralizes the threat, and then we're good. Because it is a fundamental component of what we teach is that you need to survive for 9 to 12 minutes, and then law enforcement will be there and the threat will be over. And so you need to lock down and you need to get away and but law enforcement will come and they're going to do a good job when they get here.
Do you address the issue of age-sensitive subjects? I mean, we talk about when are kids ready to hear about certain things, and I mean, you got. Newtown was what, 6 years old.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
But you've got to say, it's scary, but here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's the modern days duck and cover.
Well, we do address it, but we address it in a different way, and I'll let Kerry continue on with the discussion here, but there are age-sensitive topics, and the last thing that we want to do is introduce a topic like this to our small children.
Sure.
They're just not ready for it. But what we can do is prepare the teachers,
Right.
prepare the caregivers what to do, so that when something does happen, they're able to direct the children in a manner that doesn't hurt, scare the children emotionally.
Because you mentioned Sandy Hook. Now there was an organization, and again, this is not a criticism of the teachers or principal at Sandy Hook. They were doing what they were taught, their procedure, their policy directed them to do. But they had a relatively secure perimeter, they felt. And so their training was that if there's an active shooter announcement, that they should hide all their children in a corner and clump them all together. Well, when Adam Lanza couldn't get through the front door, he took a step 18 minutes to the right and shot through the glass and then walked into the school. At that point, all of their plans were compromised. Adam Lanza had free range.
And what should they have done?
Well, so
What do you teach them?
What they should have done is, if Sandy Hook were to ask me, or and schools like Sandy Hook have asked me, they should leave their classroom doors closed and locked while class is in session. So Adam Lanza,
Just as simple as that. Yeah.
simple as that. If he walked in, if he shot through the glass and made his way in, he would have looked down the hallway and he would have seen a hallway full of closed and
doors.
locked doors. And certainly law enforcement was coming because he had tragically shot the principal. There was gunfire, law enforcement was coming. Secondly, if the doors weren't locked, if the teachers had been told, listen, don't clump all your children in a hard corner, distribute them. And kids, here's your comment about age appropriateness is right on target. This is not something you teach them ahead of time, but in the 2 minutes, the 3 minutes that they had, if the teacher said, listen, I'm going to turn off the lights, and if I yell run and scream, kids, I want you to run around, I want you to scream, I want you to run out the door, I want you to run through the parking lot, and I want you to run to the fire station. Okay, got it, kids?
Yeah.
How long did it take me to tell you that?
Yeah.
And kids, even little kids,
And kids are trained to listen, so.
and they will.
particularly at that
That's
age.
right. That's
Well, they
right.
still
And if
do.
the teacher had shut off the light and said, "Okay, kids, everybody get under your desk, and you hide. And if I yell you to tell you to run, you run and scream and throw papers in the air." Okay, you got it? We got it. Adam Lanza walks through the door. Instead of Adam Lanza walking over to a corner of 6-year-olds huddled in a corner with a teacher, her only defense is begging a maniac with a gun to please don't kill my children, as he stands over them and pumps 223 rounds into a bunch of little bodies. Instead, if those kids had been distributed and told to run, probably he would have hurt somebody, but it wouldn't have been all of them. And it's really the great tragedy of this is it's not a hard concept, but I think we try and give people simple answers to complex problems, and it fails.
Well, I mean, we talk about teachers being underpaid. The onus being on them of that pressure, not of are you going to educate your child, but are you going to save them? I mean, it's pretty much an extraordinary amount of pressure.
It is.
Yeah. We talked, Colin, once about weapons, is people realizing there are weapons all around you.
Correct. Correct. And that's something that a lot of organizations don't like to talk about because a lot of organizations have weapons-free zones.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that we can lock a door with a shirt. Sorry about the mic there.
Yeah.
We can lock a door with a belt. We can lock doors. There are cords on the walls that can be used for weapons. This table, the chair, laptop computers, fire extinguishers make great weapons, if you will. They're all around us. We don't need to bring in knives, guns, or anything like that.
But there is such a fine line of saying, distribute the kids, lock the doors, and pick up the fire extinguisher and hit him in the head. I mean, some people aren't going to be able to do it.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. And so when we're talking to folks now, it may be a little different story in a 23-year-old teacher with their 16 6-year-olds. But if it's a high school class, if it's a college class, if it's a workplace setting, you hear screams and gunfire coming down from the hallway, and you're not in a position where you can lock yourself in and make yourself safe, or maybe even if you are, but you take the couple minutes that you have to grab the fire extinguisher, grab the computers, grab the people that are most capable, and say, listen, if he comes through that door, we're going to run and scream and distract him, and you're going to take this person out. And I got to tell you, it's a crazy discussion to have.
Sure,
It's
sure.
To sit there and talk to nurses and doctors and teachers and folks and say, listen, we need to discuss the ballistic qualities of backpacks and books and doors. But the reality is there was a time when we could say that, don't worry, this will never happen here.
Right.
But we can't look people in the eye anymore and say, don't worry, this will never happen here, because it may.
Yeah.
Correct.
And in general, I'm speaking in general, and I haven't taken a poll, Michael, but in general, many of us aren't inclined to think about what we could use as weapons.
Sure.
Because we live in a
Absolutely.
relatively safe
Yeah,
society.
yeah.
And so when something like this does happen without training, people don't know
Yeah,
what they can use and don't know the effects of using fire extinguisher.
The company is called National Violent Intruder Preparedness Solutions. It is the ultimate reality check. Now you're a for-profit company, but you work with some nonprofits through grants and stuff. People want to find out more. How do they contact you, or you have a website?
Yeah, we have a website. Go ahead, Colin.
NationalVIPS.com.
Oh, good. I'm glad we didn't have to type all that. That's good.
Yep, nationalvips.com. And they can contact us through the website.
And we'll have that on the screen. You can see it below us now. I'm delighted you guys came in. I mean, it's a conversation that sadly, I mean, and you say it yourself, we don't want to be in this business, but it's reality is requiring us to be in this business. I appreciate that. Kerry Harris, Colin Tanner, thank you.
Michael.
Let's talk of the town. I have to tell you, folks, this may well be the last talk of the town. It's like all things; it requires some underwriting, and so we're addressing those issues. And we're very proud of what we've done here so far. We've given you shows from Maltby and Mariucci on sports to healthcare with the folks from El Camino Hospital. We've talked city government. We've talked the arts, and certainly as compelling an issue as there is anywhere in society today, talking about safety. So we hope to be with you, and as I say, if you're interested in getting involved in underwriting, contact the folks here at KCAT. Until the next time, I'm Jacobi. I'll see you soon.